Hello everyone and welcome to episode 11 of Briks with Bask. This time we are revisiting the topic of Saber Teeth, which was episode 214. For this I wanted to make some iconic and my favorite saber-toothed predators. To start out, I'm gonna make a Smilodon, the famous saber-toothed cat. But it's not going to be the main build because that's not actually my favorite saber-toothed predator, but it is by far one of the coolest. I'm going to make a minifig scale Smilodon first. There already is a Smilodon Lego figure, but it was only ever in one set and it's really hard to come by. So in case you missed out on that set like I did back in the day and you haven't been able to find an affordable copy of it, here's a roughly minifigure sized Smilodon for you to add to your Lego collection. Of course, it'll be posable, and it's, roughly. Smilodon ranged in size, so the smallest were like 1 to 200 pounds, so, 50 to 100 kilograms. But the largest, Smilodon populator, which was a South American species, these were American predators, so North and South America, ranged in size from like 500 to 950 pounds, or like 200 to 430 kilograms, and stood nearly 4 feet at the shoulder, 120 centimeters. So, big cat. This is one of the largest cats that ever lived. To give you an idea, modern male Bengal tigers range from like 400 to almost 600 pounds. So, this is a very large predator. So we'll say this is Smilodon populator, and that will put it roughly in scale with our minifigure. Smilodon is a super cool predator, has some of the largest saber teeth of just about any predator that ever lived, at least by total length, which makes it and the next animal that we'll be discussing for the next part of the build a great example to demonstrate the mystery of saber teeth. Throughout Earth's history, there have actually been a bunch of saber-toothed predators. There were Gorgonopsids, there are the Mecharodont cats, which are Smilodon and its cousins, the other saber-toothed cats, like the scimitar-toothed cats and Homotherium, things like that. But there are also the Baperookamo and other cat-like animals that got saber teeth. So many different predators throughout Earth's history developed long canine or canine-like teeth for predatory purposes. And the bizarre thing about it all is we don't know what these teeth were used for or what was the benefit of them being so much longer than any predatory teeth we see today. There have been lots of hypotheses over the times. The original idea that came up for Smilodon, because it lived during ages where there was a bunch of megafauna, mammoths and ground sloths and bison, and the idea became that these longer fangs were for puncturing deeper into bigger prey. And it does seem like Smilodon was specialized to take down, some large animals, but not that it was just biting into the flanks of these large animals, or that these teeth were specialized for piercing thicker hides, because the teeth are actually quite fragile. They're compressed side to side like a knife, and they have sharp edges. So if you bit into a big, tough, struggling prey animal into the thick hide, you would likely snap your fangs. And as we've done more biomechanical studies on the teeth, on the way the jaw works, it seems much more likely that their fangs were specialized for a precision bite, that they would subdue prey. Smilodon especially has very powerful front limbs, so big bulky limbs on the figure here, that it would wrestle prey down and then deliver a specialized killing bite, likely to the throat, because that is where many cats bite nowadays, and that does match some of the dimensions, but some sort of precise killing bite. So it seems like these were precision tools, not tools used, to get past tough defenses. But the fact is, we don't know why there were so many predators like this in the past, and we have so few now. At this point, I'll be mostly done talking about Smilodon specifically, because I finished my little build. So this is my little minifigure scale Smilodon. I'm pretty happy. I like it. It's cute. It's posable. It gets across the bulky, stocky build that Smilodon had. Smilodon was not a long, lanky cat like a tiger or, when we think of our modern big cats. It was a very stout and robust and kind of wrestler-bodied cat, likely an ambush predator hunting in more closed environments and taking down prey this way. So I'm happy with this little beefy guy, and we can move on to the next section of the episode, which will be the bulk of the build, which is my personal favorite saber-toothed animal, Thylacosmilus. Now, Thylacosmilus was also South American, but it was not a saber-toothed cat, though at a glance it looks incredibly similar to Smilodon and other saber-toothed cats. It was a Sparacidont, which is a metatherian, so it is not part of the eutherians, the side of mammals that includes us placentals. Metatherians include marsupials and cousins of marsupials, because in the past there were other groups than just the marsupial-like metatherians that we have today. Thylacosmilus was one of these marsupial forms, so similar to marsupials, but not a true marsupial as we know them now. It has extremely long saber teeth, very similar in proportion to Smilodon. It is also one of the most extremely saber-toothed animals that has ever lived. It also seems to have been predatory and is, in many regards, quite comparable, but notably different in certain ways, as we will see. The biggest, which you can already see in the way I'm building the skull, their teeth extended up into the skull differently than Smilodon's. Smilodon's teeth were much more similar to our own, where go up, have a root in the skull, and that's where the tooth ends, is at that root. Thylacosmilus had open-rooted teeth, so the roots of its teeth actually continue, and those arches that I've put on the skull here are on the actual skull of Thylacosmilus. They extend up over the eyes, and the roots of the teeth continued up into these sections and seem to have been ever growing like rodent teeth, that they had sabers that could continue to grow, which is very different. That I don't know that we have any other example of saber teeth like this in the fossil record, and if they are, it's something very niche that I've not heard of. This has led many to suspect that they're using their saber teeth in a different way than Smilodon, that there's going to be some aspect to the way they're using these that requires this ability to continuously grow them. Now, how quickly they grow, I don't know. I have not seen that discussed, but they are unique saber teeth, this is one of the big reasons they're my favorites. They also just have these really unique skulls because of these tooth roots. Their skull is kind of domed, almost helmet shaped, and just gives them a real unique profile, and I find them kind of adorable. They just got these round heads, and I love them. Their teeth are also different in other ways. They're non-saber teeth. They have very reduced teeth in the rest of their mouth. Now, we see some of this in other saber-toothed predators, that they tend to have fewer teeth in portions of the mouth, fewer molars. Cats have fewer molars, so your saber-toothed cats also tend to have fewer back teeth. But the ways in which Thylacosmilus's teeth are different is also unique from Smilodon and other saber-toothed cats. For instance, they have no preserved front teeth. We have not yet found fossils that preserve incisors. Now, it's notable that we also have not found skulls that preserve the front of the skull well in most cases, so it may be that they had them, there's just not a lot of evidence for them. But if they did have them, they were not prominent, which in saber-toothed cats, very often, the front teeth are quite enlarged because those are their main feeding teeth now that they can't use their canines for grabbing onto food the way modern cats do. So while house cats have very teeny tiny front teeth, saber-toothed cats have big scary front teeth, and Thylacosmilus seems to have had basically no front teeth. There is some evidence that they did have something up there, because there's some scraping wear marks on the insides of the saber teeth, so they might have had something. Their molars are small, and they are worn down differently. They seem to be worn from the top, which is not what we see in other saber-toothed predators, where it's more worn down from the side. Thylacosmilus also has something unique from Smilodon, but not fully unique from other saber-toothed animals. They have chin flanges, these two scoops of bone that come down off of the chin to match the inside surface of the saber tooth, and likely acted as partial support that acted like half a scabbard for each saber tooth. And they have these big extreme flanges. Now we see flanges in other saber-toothed cats and other saber-toothed predators, so this is not unique to Thylacosmilus, but it is notable that Thylacosmilus's saber teeth are some of the most extreme on the planet, the only rival really being Smilodon, who does not have flanges, notably among saber-toothed cats. So Smilodon seems to have had teeth that were too long to have flanges, while many other saber-toothed cats with shorter saber teeth did have moderate flanges to help support those teeth. But it seems that Smilodon's saber teeth might not have been too long, considering that we see extremely long flanges here in Thylacosmilus. So once again, were they doing something different? Was it just that they were from two different groups and evolving slightly differently? Just a lot of interesting parallels and distinctly not parallel features. These flanges are another reason that Thylacosmilus is one of my top favorite saber-toothed animals. They're just so extreme and fascinating looking. This also leads nicely into another big question and quote-unquote mystery about saber-toothed animals, which is, did their saber fangs stick out of the mouth, as is popularly portrayed in cartoons and art and figures, or would they have been enclosed inside the mouth and been out of view when the mouth was closed, like all modern day predatory mammals and especially cats? This has been highly debated, especially among fans of saber-toothed cats. Same way that there was a lot of controversy about whether or not T-Rex had lips, because there's a bunch of T-Rex fans. But it has seriously been discussed by experts and paleo artists as to which one is more likely. Evidence for lips is quite strong because tooth enamel, especially mammalian teeth, our enamel breaks down when exposed to air for long periods. So if you went around just smiling a big toothy grin all the time, you would actually be doing damage to your teeth if you let them dry out completely. Our saliva helps protect our teeth while our mouths are open and while we're talking from drying out and from being exposed to dry air, which can start to crack and damage the enamel. So, since it seems like saber-toothed cat teeth were very similar and probably had similar enamel, they probably would have needed to be protected by lips inside the mouth. Now, how this would have been achieved has also been discussed. The two routes that were often put forward by paleo artists, at least, potentially, sometimes jokingly, is that they either had chin pouches, effectively, that they had pockets in the lower jaw and in the lower lip, in the chin, that would allow the saber teeth to fit into these spaces when the mouth closed. This is very much what we see in modern cats, where their long upper teeth go past their lower teeth and stick down into the gums, but they are enclosed in the spaces of their lower lips. This especially makes sense for animals with chin flanges, like Thylacosmilus and like many other saber-toothed cats, that these flanges may have supported a fleshy covering of lip that went down so that the teeth could just slot down into these chin scabbards and sheath the things away and protect them. For animals like Smilodon, who did not have a flange and have extremely long teeth, it's been argued they may not have been able to do this because they don't have the structure, it seems, to enclose the fangs, so their teeth may have hung outside, so maybe something different was happening there. The other suggestion that comes up is that maybe they had big jowly lips from the top jaw that hung down like a mastiff's over the fangs, which is not usually seriously suggested, but it is potentially an option, I guess. Now, you'll notice I didn't do either of those on this figure, and that's for two reasons. One, I don't know how to do that without making the head way bigger. I don't know how to build either of those without making this a much bigger figure. To build a jaw that could fit the fangs down into it, that's going to have to be a much bigger build that can have open spaces inside it. And the big lips on the upper jaw that hang down over the fangs feels like it would have kind of ruined the shape of the head. And this is going into part 2, then you want to have been able to see the teeth, and I want you to see the teeth, and this is what the classic portrayal will usually show, is with the teeth out. So this may not be the most accurate build from a paleoart standard, but it'll be more recognizable as Thylacosmilus. So if you want to come up with a way to make enclosed jowls or chin scabbards for this build, or a build of your own, I would be happy to see it. I decided not to take on that challenge this time with this build, so maybe another time. As we move on, we're getting into the body of Thylacosmilus, which is also unique when compared to Smilodon. Smilodon is very much a cat. It's a weird shaped cat, because it's shaped like kind of a cat gorilla. It's very front arm strong and beefy bodied, but it is still very much a cat. Thylacosmilus, when you look at its body, is very much not a cat. They have fairly inflexible body. They are not flexy and bendy like a cat typically is. They also have pretty inflexible limbs. Their arms and legs are not nearly as dexterous as a cat's typically is, and they aren't digitigrade. So cats and dogs and most other animals that you think of walk on their digits. So the paws of a cat or a dog are the equivalent of our fingers and toes. If you look at a cat's back leg, they have that double jointed leg, so to speak, that second bend after the knee. That bend is their heel. So the heel of their back foot has stretched up to be an extra joint to the leg effectively. So that is their foot. And then they're walking entirely on their toes. So like when you walk around tiptoe, to make yourself all tall, you're walking digitigrade. Some animals take it further. Unguligrade, like hoofed animals, are walking on the tips of their toes, like a ballerina. But birds and cats and dogs and many other animals that we typically think of are digitigrade, walking on their just fingers and toes, not on their palms or the sole of their foot. If you walk on the sole of your foot, you're known as plantigrade, which is like us, raccoons, bears, things like that, and Thylacosmilus. Thylacosmilus is plantigrade. So it does not have the proportions of a cat or dog when it's walking around and when you look at its legs. So it's a much more stiff-bodied, flat-footed posture, and once you see that, very not cat-shaped. So it definitely does seem like it could be predatory. Like its limbs were not weak, but they don't have, retractable claws, so they don't seem like they were as well suited to it potentially as the saber-toothed cats. If it was being a predator, it was doing it in a different way, which is cool. Now, there has been question as to how predatory were they, because of all of these notable differences. And one thing I didn't mention is some distinct differences about their fangs and their necks. Both Thylacosmilus and Smilodon and many other saber-toothed cats have very strong neck muscles, it seems. It seems that when Smilodon bit with its saber teeth, it was not biting using its jaws. It was biting by pushing its fangs into its prey using its neck muscles. So more of stabbing them with its face than biting with its mouth. Thylacosmilus also has a powerful neck, but it seems like its muscles were a bit better at pulling back on the fangs than pushing as compared to Smilodon. And the fangs are triangular in cross-section. So instead of being flattened, more ovoid shaped like Smilodons are, with narrowed at the front and back, Thylacosmilus's were triangular, narrowed at the back and wider at the front, which once again gives us the idea that they were using these tools in a different way for potentially a different purpose. This, coupled with some other evidence, like the fact that microwear, the little scratches and dents on the teeth, suggests that they were eating very soft food, similar to like cheetahs, which eat very fresh carcasses and only eat the best, most choice parts of the carcass, not going after tough parts and avoiding bone, has given some the idea that maybe Thylacosmilus was specialized for just soft bits, and if it has fangs that are good for pulling back, maybe these were good at stabbing into a carcass, an already dead animal, opening up the belly, and going after soft and easy to get intestines. That maybe Thylacosmilus was a specialist at internal organs and was more oft a scavenger, or when it did hunt, it was eating these parts. This would fit with it having such reduced teeth. The seeming lack of front teeth, if they do indeed lack front teeth, also fits with maybe slurping up food that's soft, like intestines. We covered this in a news all the way back in episode 91, which is definitely one of the moments that Thylacosmilus started to become one of my favorite saber-toothed predators. And it was very much helped along by the fact that we got 2 amazing bits of fan art in response to that news, which were both gifs of Thylacosmilus feeding on intestine of an animal, one by Clara and one by Frederick. Clara's is a very realistic scene of Thylacosmilus opening up a South American herbivore and eating some intestines. And then Frederick's is an adorable, chunky Thylacosmilus sitting there slurping a endless intestine noodle out of a pig that just keeps going. And these are both some of my favorite fan art we've ever gotten. They're amazing, and I was in fact tempted to make my Lego in homage to these gifts, but I thought that'd be a bit too deep of a cut. So just know that your gifts inspired this build and have stuck with me this whole time. Now, as far as this scavenger hypothesis goes, I don't know how convinced I am or am not by it. It's definitely a possibility. There are animals like cheetahs that are very specific feeders and feed on really only a portion of the prey and are, by comparison to like hyenas, quite wasteful. If you gave a cheetah the time to eat all it wanted to eat, it would leave a lot behind because it is not very good at getting to those tougher to get to parts. Now that is partially out of necessity. They are a small big cat in Africa, where there are many other predators that outweigh them by quite a bit, so they are having to eat the best bits they can get real fast because they are not going to be able to defend this carcass, and when someone else shows up, they're gonna have to leave. Maybe Thylacosmilus was dealing with a similar issue. They were not a particularly big predator compared to Smilodon, ranging in size from like 90 to 300 pounds, so like 40 to 150 kilograms, and only measuring about 2 feet, 60 centimeters at the shoulder. But they were one of the largest known Metatherian predators. So before saber-toothed cats made it down into South America, they probably were one of the larger mammalian predators that would have been around. There were others that they would have been sharing it with, and there were also, terror birds and things like that they would have been competing with. So maybe they had some specialty in that way. I often hesitate whenever we attribute a scavenger lifestyle to a predator, a large-bodied predator like this, because even at 90 pounds, that's not a small animal. That's still getting pretty hefty, and at 330 pounds, that's bigger than me. That's not a small animal. So I always hesitate to attribute a pure scavenger lifestyle or scavenger specialist to an animal like that, because today we don't have any examples. Like hyenas are the famous one, but they are not pure scavengers. They are predators that are very good at scavenging. Vultures really seem to be one of our only scavenging specialist vertebrates. So I don't know that I fully buy it, but it is a neat idea. And with that, we will wrap up this episode by taking a look at the finished Thylacosmilus. I'm very happy with how this guy turned out. I think this little guy is appropriately cute and accurate to Thylacosmilus. both of which I think are top priorities, that it shows how different Thylacosmilus is from a cat and how lovably derpy they are. So I'm very happy with this. I think it's a fun and cute version. I wish there was a way that I could have done enclosed things when the mouth was closed, but I just couldn't figure that out at this scale, and I didn't feel like doing another giant build like the owlbear. But as I mentioned earlier, if you have ideas on how to make a more accurate, or a potentially more accurate, a lipped Thylacosmilus, I would love to see your builds. And if you build this design, you can get the instructions and the parts list down in the description. There's a link to our Rebrickable page where all of that's available. Please, please, please share photos. We have a page on our Discord for Briks with Bask and for Lego builds. So I'd be happy to see your Thylacosmilus builds or other paleo designs. As always, thank you so much for watching and joining us here on another episode of Briks with Bask. And we'll see you next time with our next topic. Only one left this year, so we'll see what it turns out to be.